What if an alien spacecraft landed in a British forest, and the military ordered everyone to stay silent? December 1980, two U.S. Air Force security officers stationed at RAF Bentwaters saw something impossible. A brilliant light descended from the sky into Rendlesham Forest, just beyond the base perimeter fence. At first, they thought a plane had crashed. What they found instead would haunt them for decades. 3 men entered the woods that night. All 3 witnessed something not of this earth. This was no distant light in the sky. It was a craft on the ground, mere feet away from them. The case file would later be called Britain's Roswell, but the most chilling detail is almost always overlooked. That detail? The craft was apparently scanning a bunker filled with nuclear weapons. Let's start at the beginning. The night of December 26, 1980, was bitterly cold. Airman First Class John Burroughs was on patrol near the east gate of RAF Woodbridge. Suddenly, the entire forest to the east lit up like a stadium. A fireball seemed to be dropping into the trees. His partner, Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston, thought an aircraft had gone down. They radioed it in immediately. Permission was granted to investigate. The 2 men, joined by Airman Ed Cabansag, drove into the woods. What they found stopped them cold. A triangular craft, roughly 9 feet across, hovering silently above the forest floor. It had no windows, no doors, no rivets. Just a smooth, black, glass-like surface that seemed to absorb light. Peniston approached close enough to touch it. He felt a strange electrical charge in the air. He saw strange symbols etched into its surface. Not writing, but geometric glyphs he could never forget. Then, in complete silence, the craft rose a few feet, weaved through the trees, and shot away at unimaginable speed. The 3 men stood in shock. The forest was suddenly quiet again. But the story doesn't end there. 2 nights later, on December 28th, the phenomenon returned. This time, the deputy base commander got involved. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt was a skeptic. He went into the woods expecting to debunk the whole thing. What he recorded on his personal microcassette recorder is now known as the Halt tape. 18 minutes of pure astonishment. You can hear his voice change from clinical detachment to genuine bewilderment in real time. This is a dopamine spike moment. Listen to what his team witnessed that second night. The object was directing beams of light down at the ground. Deliberate, searching beams, as if looking for something. Halt's team included security police, an airman, and his senior leadership. All saw it. All were changed by it. Then came the radiation readings. The team carried a Geiger counter, and it went wild at the landing site. The readings were 10 times higher than normal background radiation. Something had irradiated that patch of Earth. The indentations in the ground formed a perfect equilateral triangle. Each depression was precise, as if made by landing gear. But here's where the story takes its most disturbing turn. What was the craft doing near RAF Bentwaters? RAF Bentwaters was not just any airbase. It was one of NATO's largest nuclear weapons storage facilities. The base housed tactical nuclear bombs, ready to be loaded onto aircraft at a moment's notice if the Cold War turned hot. The landing site in Rendlesham Forest was directly adjacent to the weapons storage area, almost as if the craft was positioned deliberately. Security police later reported seeing beams of light fired down into the weapons storage bunkers themselves. This is the nuclear connection that transforms Rendlesham from a mere sighting into something far more significant. The craft wasn't just visiting. It was scanning, probing, cataloging the nuclear arsenal of the Western Alliance. This was not an isolated incident. UFOs have been reported at nuclear facilities worldwide for decades. Malmstrom Air Force Base, 1967. 10 nuclear missiles simultaneously shut down while a glowing red object hovered above. Soviet nuclear base in Ukraine, 1982. An object hovered for hours, and multiple missiles activated without human command. The pattern is undeniable. Whatever these objects are, they have an intense interest in our nuclear capabilities. Here's another dopamine spike. The late astronaut Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man on the moon, spoke about Rendlesham directly. Mitchell stated that high-ranking military officers privately confirmed to him that the Rendlesham craft was extraterrestrial. He claimed the British government and U.S. military had been covering up the truth for decades, and the evidence supports him. The British Ministry of Defence initially dismissed the incident as of no defence significance, but their own files tell a different story. A former MOD investigator, Nick Pope, later admitted they were ordered to downplay the event. The truth was actively suppressed. Pope ran the British government's UFO desk for years. He called the Rendlesham case the most compelling he ever investigated. He confirmed that the MOD never conducted a proper investigation, because they were told not to. The fix was in from the start. But why? Why cover up a UFO landing in a forest? The answer may lie in what the craft was actually doing there. If an extraterrestrial intelligence was scanning NATO's nuclear arsenal, it implied they were monitoring our deadliest weapons. That revelation would cause panic. It would undermine military confidence. It would raise questions no government wanted to answer. The Cold War was at its peak in 1980. Nuclear tensions between NATO and the Soviet Union were razor-thin. Admitting that an unknown intelligence could neutralize or scan nuclear weapons would be a catastrophic blow to deterrence strategy. Some researchers believe the craft was sending a message: your nuclear weapons are being watched. Use them at your peril. This theory is supported by the fact that the Rendlesham craft was never hostile. It observed, scanned, and left. But the physical evidence remained. The radiation, the landing marks, the broken branches at precise heights. Trees at the site showed damage at exactly the same altitude, as if something had pushed through the canopy horizontally. John Burroughs, the first airman on scene, suffered severe health problems after the encounter. Heart issues, neurological damage. In 2015, the U.S. Veterans Affairs finally acknowledged his injuries were caused by the Rendlesham incident, after decades of denial. The VA ruling was a bombshell. For the first time, a government agency admitted the Rendlesham encounter caused real physical harm. This was not psychological, not a hoax, not a misidentification. The U.S. government had just validated the case by paying for its consequences. Here's another revelation. Jim Penniston later underwent regression hypnosis and recovered suppressed memories of the encounter. Under hypnosis, he recalled touching the craft and receiving a download of information. Binary code that he wrote down afterward. Penniston filled pages with ones and zeros. Years later, a computer expert decoded the binary into a startling message. The decoded message listed specific geographic coordinates, historical dates, and a chilling phrase: exploration of humanity. The coordinates pointed to ancient sites across the globe, including the Great Pyramid and the Nazca Lines. Skeptics dismiss the binary code as confabulation, but the specific details match information Penniston couldn't have known. The Rendlesham Forest incident remains the most well-documented UFO case in British history, and the most disturbing. Multiple credible military witnesses, physical trace evidence, radiation readings, official cover-up, and a nuclear weapons connection. The official explanation, that the airmen saw the Orford Ness lighthouse, is insulting to anyone who examines the facts. A lighthouse beam does not leave radiation burns. It does not create triangular landing marks. It does not move through a forest. The lighthouse is 10 miles away. The airmen were inside a dense forest. The lighthouse beam cannot penetrate trees and descend vertically. Lieutenant Colonel Halt explicitly stated on his tape, It's not the lighthouse. The lighthouse is over there. This is something else. The government knew the lighthouse explanation was absurd. They offered it anyway because the truth was too dangerous to admit. Decades later, the witnesses have never changed their stories. They gained nothing from coming forward. They lost careers and health. In 2018, a new scientific analysis of the landing site soil revealed unusual isotopic ratios inconsistent with terrestrial origin. The soil contained microscopic spheres of pure aluminum and titanium, materials commonly associated with aerospace propulsion systems. These were not naturally occurring. They were manufactured, and they matched samples from other UFO landing sites worldwide. The Rendlesham forest incident was not a one-off. It was part of a global pattern of nuclear weapons monitoring by unknown intelligences. The question is no longer whether these objects are real. The question is what they want and what happens when they decide to intervene. The airmen of Rendlesham Forest received a message they were never supposed to remember. But they did, and now we know it too. Part 2 covers the official explanation.